the air in the Sierra Nevada mountains in April, it's still cold. It's sharp with the scent of pine. In 1981, this was the backdrop for the quiet, remote resort community of Keddie, California. A place designed for escape, really, built on tranquility.
And that's a contrast, that is. Well, it's just difficult to process.
It is, because it was right there, in that setting, that Cabin 28 became the site of a brutal, savage massacre that remains one of the most baffling cold cases in American history.
It's the ultimate betrayal of environment, isn't it? This deep dive is our attempt to apply some cold logic to the source material we have, dissecting the forensic evidence and confronting the decades of compromised investigations.
And trying to understand the primal savagery that occurred inside that small vacation home.
Yeah.
Our mission today is to go beyond the rumors and really understand the facts. On the morning of April 12th, the horror was discovered by 14-year-old Sheila Sharp.
She was just returning home from a neighbor's cabin, only 10 feet away.
Imagine. The victims found inside were Glenna Sue Sharp, she was 36, her oldest son John Sharp, 15, and John's friend Dana Wingate, who was 17.
And Sue's 12-year-old daughter Tina Sharp was just gone.
Damaged.
The scene itself was overwhelming. All three victims found inside, they were located in the living room.
And Sue was clearly the focus of this intense violence.
Oh, absolutely. She was repeatedly beaten with a blunt object, likely a hammer, and stabbed. John and Dana had also suffered severe blunt force trauma. Dana specifically showed evidence of having been manually strangled on top of the beating.
The sheer level of overkill, it speaks volumes about the perpetrator's state of mind.
It does.
But the question that immediately jumps out, the one that has truly haunted investigators for over 40 years, is what we call the acoustic paradox.
The silence. That is the ghost of this crime scene.
In an adjacent bedroom, physically separated by one thin wall, 3 young boys.
Sue's sons, Rick, who was 10, and Greg, who was only 5, along with their friend Justin Smart, 12 years old.
And they slept completely unharmed. They, and the neighbors next door, reported hearing absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Think about that for a second. A prolonged, chaotic attack involving hammers cracking bone, knives being used in a small wooden cabin.
And complete silence is maintained. How is that even possible?
A struggle for life that desperate, that physical, should have been impossible to ignore in such close quarters.
So if you're profiling the killer, you have to account for that silence.
It forces us to analyze 2 terrifying possibilities. 1, were the boys drugged to ensure their silence?
Or 2.
Or 2, did Justin Smart's later recollection, and he framed it as a dream at first, involving 3 men in the living room, did that suggest he actually woke up?
Witnessed part of it and just cowered in absolute fear, mimicking sleep to survive.
Either scenario implies incredible control or just incredible luck on the part of the attackers. I mean, given how close the cabins were, the risk they took was immense.
Which only makes the effectiveness of the silence that much more chilling.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's turn our attention to the physical evidence and the extreme characteristics of the violence, moving from just the body count to understanding the signature of hate that was imprinted on that scene.
Right. This wasn't a quick execution.
No, this was personal, it was intimate, and it was designed to inflict maximum pain, both emotional and physical.
And the restraint is as telling as the trauma. John's wrists were tightly bound.
Right.
Dana and John, they had their ankles tied together using extension cords from the cabin. Dana's hands were also taped, but loosely.
And the weapons of choice blunt objects, hammers, steak knives, John's throat was slashed. It just shows a deeply personal fury, not the efficiency of a typical criminal.
And the disturbing display of Sue Sharp is central to this signature. It elevates it far beyond just a simple rage killing.
Absolutely.
She was found hog-tied, wrists and ankles tied together, and her nightgown was pulled up. Her underwear was found wrapped in tape, stuffed into her mouth, and then tied with a bra.
I mean, this isn't just murder. This is elaborate, sexualized staging.
It's designed to humiliate, to degrade, and to send a specific, chilling message of dominance. Or maybe deep personal betrayal.
It points to a very specific, very intense grievance. We know Sue was the only one of the 3 found inside to have had defensive wounds.
Which suggests she fought back fiercely.
But there's another forensic detail that connects her to the order of events.
The blood on her feet.
Exactly, including between her toes. That implies she either walked or was walked through blood that had already been shed.
Which analytically suggests John and Dana were likely attacked first, or at least incapacitated first, before the focus shifted entirely to Sue.
The calculated nature of the humiliation seems to contradict the frenzied use of the hammer.
It's a puzzle of controlled rage.
The sheer personalization of the crime against Sue and the boys, though, it makes the fate of the fourth person in that cabin, 12-year-old Tina Sharp, an even greater enigma.
Why separate the victims?
Right.
Her disappearance is a critical contradiction in the source material. We know she was there. A bloody shoe print matching Tina's was found near the bodies.
So she was present during the events.
No question. Yet she was not left with the others.
And 3 years later, her remains were tragically discovered about 60 miles south of Keddie.
In a remote forested area, Feather Falls. And due to the degradation, investigators were never able to determine a cause of death.
But what's really critical is the conflicting evidence about her departure.
Right. When Sheila returned to the scene, she noted Tina's jacket and shoes were missing.
Which is strange. If she was a struggling victim, why would her attackers allow or even help her get dressed?
So we have to ask the critical why question here. If this was all some premeditated revenge against Sue, why take Tina?
Was she the original target, maybe? Taken for sexual assault or ransom?
Or was she simply an unexpected surviving witness who interrupted the violence and therefore had to be forcibly removed?
And disposed of later in a remote area. Her removal adds a calculated logistical layer to the brutality we see inside the cabin.
Yeah, transporting a body 60 miles, that suggests an attacker capable of detailed planning and execution, which really complicates the profile we get from the explosive, intimate rage in Cabin 28.
This case is notorious not just for the complexity of the crime, but for the history of the investigation itself. When you look at the source material, the failure of accountability almost overshadows the horror of the event. We have to address the claims of a fundamentally botched investigation.
And allegations of corruption. The history is incredibly contentious. It involves the local Plumas County Sheriff's Office, the FBI, the DOJ.
And there are decades-long claims of official malfeasance, right?
Yes, particularly centered around the local sheriff, a man named Doug Thomas.
And the allegations suggest Thomas, who himself had lived in Cabin 28 only 5 months before the murders.
In incredible detail.
Right. That he was possibly friends with one of the early persons of interest, Martin Smart. And that the case was compromised due to local involvement in drug running.
The implication is that the local investigation was either incompetent or actively working to divert focus.
And for so many years, the media narrative focused almost entirely on two men, Martin Smart and his roommate, John Bo Bobede.
It did.
So we need to use the source material to methodically dismantle the two main pieces of alleged evidence that created this public focus. First, the supposed confession letter.
Oh, the letter. The media repeatedly hammered home one specific sensational quote from a letter Martin wrote to his wife, Marilyn, after they split up.
The key line, taken completely out of context, was, "Pay the price of your love, and now that I have bought it with 4 people's lives."
It sounds like a confession. I mean, it's about as damning as it gets.
It does, until you actually consult the full, unredacted source material.
And the meaning shifts entirely.
He was referencing his own 4 children that he had given up to be with Marilyn and her family, not the murder victims.
The media presented it as a murder confession, when the letter's actual context suggests it was a melodramatic statement about relationship sacrifice.
And that single quote shaped the investigation for 20 years.
Exactly. And the second pillar of the theory was the widely reported claim that Martin confessed to a therapist.
Which was also debunked by later reports.
It was. The DOJ interviewed the therapist in question, who firmly denied Martin ever admitted to the killings. The therapist only confirmed that Marilyn had called him, expressing her own suspicions about her husband's potential involvement.
Just so, suspicion, not confession.
Not confession.
So the core foundations of this long-standing narrative, the letter and the confession, were built on out-of-context statements and official denials.
And we have the hammer Martin reported missing, which was later recovered from a pond near the resort. And while that sounds damning, no physical evidence, no hair, no blood, no definitive DNA ever tied either Martin Smart or Bo Bobede to that brutal scene.
And here's the definitive analytical point, the one that makes the decades of focus on them essentially a dead end.
In 2018, modern forensics finally gave us a hard answer. DNA was found on the adhesive tape used to bind the victims.
And that DNA was matched to a specific, identifiable, and living suspect.
It's a total game changer.
It is. Since Bo Bobede died in 1988 and Martin Smart died in 2000, this single piece of forensic evidence likely touched DNA, skin cells left behind, during the intimate act of binding the victims.
It completely undermines the entire original police theory. It forces the investigation to look elsewhere.
So the question then becomes, if the living suspect isn't Marty or Bo, who were the other alternatives noted in those original police reports?
We have to introduce Chuck and Henry.
Two local men who came forward late in the initial investigation.
What makes their account noteworthy is that Chuck had unexplained scratches and cuts on his hands.
And they admitted they were near Cabin 28 between 3:0 and 4:0 a.m. on the morning of the murders.
But their inconsistent statements muddle the facts immediately. Chuck claimed to see two suspicious men getting into a truck at the resort exit.
But Henry, on the other hand, claimed he saw one man inside the resort, and it looked like he was dumping trash.
Two people, same place, same time, completely different stories about what they observed leaving the crime scene.
And then there's the truly bizarre postscript to Henry. In 1982, he gave a strange, completely false confession to the murders.
And when pressed, he admitted he only confessed because people in that small community were cruelly teasing him with a nickname, the Keddie Machete.
That detail speaks volumes, doesn't it? About the dark pathology festering beneath the surface of that tight-knit community.
To treat a horrific quadruple murder or near quadruple murder as fodder for a cruel joke shows a level of detachment that is just unsettling.
It definitely complicates the integrity of local statements given to investigators.
Yeah.
So we come back to the present. We have definitive DNA matched to a living suspect confirmed in 2018.
Yet no name has been publicly released. No arrest has been made.
So given the institutional inertia of a cold case, is it difficult to prosecute a case based on DNA evidence that's 40 years old? Especially when the initial scene investigation was so compromised.
It raises a profound legal challenge. While the DNA points definitively away from the original suspects and toward a living person building a full case, it requires more than just a match on a piece of tape.
You need motive, opportunity.
Right, and that's incredibly difficult when the original scene was mishandled and local police reports were full of inconsistencies and potential corruption. The sheer violence, the staging, the intimate use of hammers and knives, it all points to extreme malice and personal grievance.
Possibly linked to the alleged drug activity or a domestic betrayal?
The puzzle pieces are all there, but the glue is missing.
What stands out to me is the central tension of this case. The quiet beauty of the Sierra Nevada, the small community where everyone knew everyone else's secrets.
Contrasting sharply with the primal savagery inflicted inside Cabin 28.
It's a massacre that should have been loud, chaotic, and impossible to conceal.
So in a crime this personal, this prolonged, and this brutal, a crime that destroyed one family and haunted an entire community, how can the truth remain silent for over 40 years?
Does time truly heal these wounds?
Or does the institutional failure simply bury the truth deeper beneath layers of rumors and compromised investigation?
The physical brutality tells us exactly what happened inside that cabin. But the silence surrounding the case, the silence from the boys, the silence of the neighbors, and the silence from the compromised investigation, that tells us the story of why justice has been denied.
The frozen clock of justice ticks on.
Still waiting for that living suspect to be named.